Hey everybody, Hostrone here with another Star Trek First Edition video. Hope everybody's doing alright. So, Life Science has now been out and legal for a bit, and people are having difficulty with how the Vidiians are playing and their power level. People are upset. They think that the Vidiians are too good. Other people are saying there's plenty of ways to beat them. People just haven't made their adjustments yet. Some players are refusing to play until the Vidiians are dealt with. At least one person has commented that they feel personally attacked, that the Vidiians are designed to make the way they play the game no longer viable or fun or anything. So, as I've done in the past, when people start getting upset about a particular deck and how strong or overpowered it is, I take a video and I talk about the deck that people are upset about, and I talk about where are its weaknesses, how do you exploit those weaknesses, how can you leverage them to win, or what is it that you need to do in order to prepare for how to deal with that deck. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the new Vidiian deck, and we're going to talk about where are its weaknesses, where are the chinks in its armor, and how do you exploit them, how do you prepare your deck to be able to deal with them. And I'm going to start by basically prefacing all of that with the concept that in a customizable card game, when new stuff comes out, by definition, it means that you have to make adjustments as a player. When design of any card game says we're going to go into some new territory, and we're going to design something new, we're going to expand the sandbox, it's the design term, or the colloquialism or phrase or whatever you want to say. But as game designers, I'll say we want to expand the sandbox a bit here. We're going to come up with some new cards that are going to maybe do new things. We're going to do something completely brand new that hasn't been seen in the game before, and we have reasons A, B, and C as to the reason why they're doing it. So I don't really want to go into the weeds about the new Vidiians and the designers and what they were thinking and why and all that. We're going to just focus on what it is that they are and what they're doing and how do you prepare for it. So I'm going to say that, I'm not going to name names because there's no reason to. I don't feel like jumping on someone for feeling the way they feel because, they have every right to feel that way. But I will say that, it's important as card players to realize that, we all have like preferred play styles, and it can feel like design or the meta game or whatever is just hammering you personally, and it's important to maybe take a deep breath and then come at it from a fresh perspective, have somebody give you some thoughts and ideas about maybe how you can adjust your decks, your play style, or whatever to deal with the new metagame. Because the metagame's always shifting. So people are upset about how Vidiians are now, but that won't necessarily mean that they're going to be upset about Vidiians in the future. Because once people make the adjustments, once top players go to tournaments and exploit those weaknesses and show that, well, maybe the Vidiians aren't all that cracked up to be, then people might shy away from playing them. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen because I think the Vidiian deck is set up to be new player friendly. So I definitely think the Vidiians are going to get played by newer players that, or maybe less interested in being like a top tier competition player because it is a simple, straightforward deck. I personally like what this new Vidiian deck for how it opens up the ability to do new things, that because it takes so few seed cards to make the deck go, that there's a lot of seed card flexibility for the Vidiians to do a lot of different things. And so I think the Vidiians are going to see a bunch of play. And so even if people start making adjustments, it's not necessarily going to make the Vidiian deck go away. But if You know, if people are prepared for exploiting the weaknesses, then the deck is going to get put into its place metagame wise, and games won't be lopsided, they'll be interesting, and that's what we really want anyway as card gamers. You know, lopsided games are no fun for who's ever on the losing side of it. And so, you know, really my interest in this video is just to give people the tools they need to at least make the games interesting. I cannot promise that you will win, but I can promise then that you will not feel like you're getting stomped on. So let's get into it. So first, I think it's pretty clear with this new Vidiian deck that Oregon Bank seems to be everyone's biggest concern. Okay, 1 seed card, and they get a ship and 3 people and a weapon all in their quadrant right on top of their mission. So if you have an obvious headquarters, if you have an obvious outpost starting location, that Vidiian player can kind of start right on top of you. And the ship is not small, you know, and with the ability for it to claw your ship on their turn, you don't necessarily have the ability to like run away. So how do you deal with that? So clearly the first step in dealing with the new Vidiian deck is dealing with Oregon Bank. And to me, the answer is incredibly simple and straightforward. You shoot it. I have a Coach Kevin-ism that for everybody who's had a Coach Kevin session knows that one of my many Coach Kevin-isms is when in doubt, shoot it out. So if you're not quite sure how to deal with something, if you can shoot your way out of that problem, if the problem is shootable in the game, shoot it. Okay, it's a 10-10-10 ship, and the Vidiian player is likely to have a Battle Bridge side deck, and they're likely to have just their thermo whatever charges, so +3/+3 to their weapons and shields. You know what the number is that you need to get over. So we either need 2 7-weapon ships or 1 ship that can come up with 14 weapons. And really, that's not that hard to do. Okay, there are a lot of ships that are staffable minimally and are thus able to, you know, deal with an Oregon Bank. And since they're likely to start on top of you, you can then jujitsu that, and you can turn that to your advantage by knowing that they're starting close to you, which means the ships don't necessarily have to have great range, and they don't even necessarily have to have enough people to staff both of them to move, because if your opponent's starting the Oregon Bank at your outpost or your headquarters or homeworld or whatever, they're there, and you can just go, here's a ship, I put 2 guys on it, they undock, they beam back to the other ship, it undocks, and then I just put a leader on each ship. Don't need to be staffed for the fight, just need a leader on each ship, and they shoot your ship. Easy peasy. So if you have a deck with a seedable ship, then all you need to do is have a space door and get yourself a universal ship as a second ship, have 2 leaders, and have the ability to undock both of them, and you can blast that Oregon Bank. And once that ship is damaged, it's going to be hard for the Vidiian player to then recover from that, because once it's damaged, they then have to repair it before they can't claw you, because if they claw you, then you just move and destroy their ship, or they claw you, put their people on your ship, and then they have to get rid of the claw. But then those people are stuck on your ship, and your ship is free to move without being damaged, which means that no matter who they kill on that ship, or take, or whatever, you just beam another leader on it and shoot them. And you don't even need a leader if it's a counterattack. And so you literally just put anybody on that ship, and then that ship is free to counterattack. So the aggressiveness of the Oregon Bank can be jujitsu'd to its disadvantage. So to give you an example of how a deck can basically be modified to deal with an Oregon Bank without losing the identity of the deck for the most part, we're going to look at a deck that I played here, the most recent tournament I played in, which was the South Dakota Regional, okay? And that is examining my very own black hole deck. So I was only doing 5 missions. I start with the Enterprise E in play, which in and of itself goes to a 10-10-11 ship by just putting, you know, 3 Enterprise E people on board, which is not hard because I'd have like the Troys, right? And then I'd probably almost always have like 1 more Enterprise E person. So it was usually a 10-9-10 very easily. Okay. So if we're trying to get to 14 weapons with just the Enterprise E, literally all we need to do is then have the matching commander on board, which then means Jean-Luc Picard. Because if we're going with the Troys, then the William T. Rikers are not available, and we have Picards that can do it, right? So if we can then put a Picard, we then have 3, so now we have a 10-10-10. And then we literally just need to do a captain's log. And then we literally just need to do 1 get a +1 off of our tactic. Or alternatively, we don't even need to do the captain's log, because at 10 weapons, all we need to do is get to 14. So then we need any tactic that gets us a 4 or better, and there's many of those. Most notably is going to be Quantum Torpedo, which works great with a Sovereign class ship. So we have a ship that is going to have the ability to shoot the Vidiian ship just by putting its matching commander on board it, or by basically putting, you know, just putting a couple of Enterprise E people on it to staff it. Which then leads me to the next thing, and that is that one of the cards, in my opinion, that is the strongest against the Organ Bank is going to be Make It So, which a matching commander can download of this ship. I can get Make It So, but I can also just use the battle bridge that's 13 different tactics, and I can just go, hey, boom, I'm just going to do 13 different tactics. I'm going to already have a Make It So with that battle bridge. And so with that, and then of course the Make It So and its ability to download any tactic card means you're pretty much guaranteed. You just need like a 9-weapon ship and get a +4 tactic, or a 10-weapon ship and get a 9-weapon ship and a +5 tactic, or a 10-weapon ship and a +4 tactic, and you're going to be able to damage their ship, right? Cool. And with the Make It So, you can unstop the ship with the matching commander board and shoot it again. So that's kind of our preferred way of dealing with an Organ Bank. 2 ships that you can just put things on, shoot it, and they have trouble dealing with it, as I said before, or a single ship with a matching commander, and the use of Make It So to, after the commander shoots the Organ Bank, and you hopefully just have enough shields and whatever to get, to protect yourself, and then you unstop the ship and you shoot it again, and in a single turn the Organ Bank is gone. They lost their people, their Vidiian harvester, and they've lost the ability to harass you in that quadrant, unless they find another way to come harass you, which they might, but then that's just more time and resources on their part to try to deal with you instead of attempting missions. So even though, like, say, this deck here that I played at the South Dakota Regional isn't normally like a battle-oriented deck, it can be modified in order to become one that can deal with an Organ Bank. So I went ahead and did that. And this is what we come up with. What we come up with is that if we just not do the black hole, not try to do the 2-mission win, accept that this is now a 3-mission win deck, accept that this deck is so good at solving missions that going to a 3rd mission is not that big of a deal. We have evidence for that in the fact that when I played the games with this deck, I either lost points and had to do a 3rd mission, or I had to go through 3 missions, more or less go through almost all the dilemmas on 3 missions before solving 2 of them and winning, but I had just 1 dilemma remaining at the 3rd mission, just the way things worked out with facing dilemmas and so forth. And the deck moves fast enough and has enough tricks in it that it can blow through dilemmas and deal with dilemmas very well. And so doing 9 dilemmas is not that big of a deal. The way the deck was set up, it was assuming that it was facing 8 dilemmas at 2 different missions minimum. And so we have a deck that can deal with enough dilemmas, has mission solving potency, and we can just not do the 2-mission win, and we can then put a different actual mission, refuse immigration. We take out the black holes out of the draw deck, And what do we put in? Well, we put in ready room doors, because the ready room door is going to get us our matching commander, and then that matching commander is going to work, he's going to work with the make it so that we can blast an organ bank in a single turn. So with all these ready room doors, the ability to then we put the captain's log in the deck, well then we need another another way to then deal with some of the variations that might occur in that situation. And so since we pulled 2 black holes out and all we did was replace one with a battle bridge door, then what we can do is we have the ability to put in a space door. And what the space door can do for us is get us a universal ship to help the Enterprise, and or it can grab us a space dock. And so when a Vidiian organ bank player, even if we can't shoot it in a single turn, if it tries to lock us with a boarding claw, we can then move, damaging both, then simply dock, instantly repair with the space dock, and now we have an undamaged ship and they have a damaged ship, and it's a one-shot to kill their ship. So there's multiple ways to deal with the organ bank that way. So taking this all in total, there are ways to deal with an organ bank so that they leave you alone, okay? Because that's, I think, the thing number one that people are concerned about with the Vidiians is the fact that that organ bank can be a real problem as it tries to just wander around and stuff like that. If the Vidiian player wants to kind of keep it away from your outpost, it's a whole nother matter. But at some point they have to come and deal with you. Because if you're just going to sit there and play personnel and stuff like that, you're going to be totally fine. And if they try to get close enough to you, then you should then just come after them, right? Because they have to search for spares somewhere, and that means then that you, if you are prepared for the organ bank, can do exactly that by seeding your outpost or whatever right there where the organ bank is. And then if they go first, they have to decide, do I want to stay here without knowing what you're going to do, or run away, in which case they'd run away. And you can just kind of feel things out from there. So the big takeaway for dealing with organ bank is you just need to get access to, make it so, or just a couple of ships or whatever, and you just take that organ bank out quickly so it cannot harass you for the rest of the game. And then that makes the opponent have to put additional resources into trying to harass you in the future. But if you could deal with an organ bank efficiently, then you can deal with any ship. Any of the Vidiian cruisers can be dealt with efficiently, right? Cool. Now, problem number 2 with the Vidiians that people are concerned about is their ability to draw a ton of cards. Fine. So they draw a ton of cards. Realistically, the Vidiians are more or less locked into playing 3 personnel if you don't give them any help. They're going to have a card play, they're going to have a free play with the Vidiian Sodality, and then, if they organ harvest their own guy, they lose 1 guy to play 2 guys, and so that's basically them netting 3, okay? You play a 3rd person, then they get a 4th. In that scenario, they're basically always 1 person will play better than you. But, those cards still have to be in their hand, right? So one thing that you can do is you can go the other direction and say, you know what, you're going to draw a bunch of cards. You know what, here's so many cards that there's just nothing you can do with it. You don't have, if you're going to spend your card play on a personnel, then you're not playing something else that you're drawing. Okay, if you're going to use the card play on a personnel, and then you're going to get your free play, and then I'm going to, and then you're going to net an additional +1 person, I'm going to give you so many cards that that's all you get. Okay, you're going to get 4 people, but you're going to draw 6 cards a turn, 7 cards a turn. Okay, And then once we've done that, you've drawn a bunch of cards, and I've played some personnel and stuff, then there's the mismatch there. And now they have too many cards in hand and not enough things to do with them. Okay? You can also go the other route. You can go, you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to play like all my personnel hard and fast and not do a lot of draws. But then once I've got all my people out, then I'm going to take a ton of draws and not really play anybody. Or the only people I play are just, I'm going to put 2 people in play, I'm going to put my 2 best like skill hossy people into play, and then we're going to basically play a straight up game. And if I have your organ bank out of the way and you can't really harass me, then I'm free and clear just to kind of more or less do my missions, and my deck is set up to do missions better than Vidiians only can. Because that's the truth. The Vidiian only build, yes, they have like all the skills, you know, obviously they have like all the skills and stuff like that, but they don't have cheats. And so if your dilemmas are set up well, if your combos are set up well, they're gonna have a hard time. Then of course there's always the reality that if you yourself are playing with a battle deck and you're doing what we said, how to deal with the organ bank, well then after you've dealt with the organ bank, you just do more of that and you deal with everybody that they play. Play another ship is going to get blown up. I maybe put a fleet together. If I'm playing a fleet deck, I blow up your outpost. Because the Vidiians are not, they don't have a headquarters. You know, they have a homeworld, but they don't have a headquarters. And so chances are they're probably playing people at an outpost that's not their homeworld. Cool? So, yeah. Obviously the Vidiians, one of their options that they have strategically is to use Construct Starship to have the organ bank build them an outpost in another quadrant so they have more than one outpost. But again, if you can deal with the organ bank, then there being an outpost there doesn't really help them that much. And if they burn the special download to play people to the organ bank, you having a plan to deal with the organ bank means that anybody else they play to that organ bank to try to be more harassing of you also gets blown up. So really with the Vidiians, the 2 things you need to do in order to be prepared for them is 1, have a plan for blowing up an organ bank, and 2, learning how to just simply manage your draws and your plays so that you're doing it efficiently and you're not doing both at the same time. Because if you stagger it, if you're like, okay, I'm going to give you, and not stagger it like one then the other, back to the first, back to the second, not every other turn kind of a thing, but like here's 3 straight turns of me just drawing a ton of cards, and then here's like 2 or 3 turns of me playing a bunch of people, or vice versa. You know, if your deck is designed to be able to put 3 or 4 people into play, then you can do that quickly and then draw a ton of cards, and then now you just have options, right? So that's kind of how I would recommend that a person do it, is like play hard and fast early and then starve them out. Okay? Because when you starve them out later and they're already having difficulty with getting through dilemmas in order to get missions solved, when you starve them out later, then that's when you are leveraging the fact that your deck is probably better designed for mission solving. Is that you don't need a whole bunch of draws and a whole bunch of plays later in the game, whereas they definitely do, in order to find the things that they need to find. Now, issue number 3 with the Vidiians. Weakness number 3 is that because, and I've already said this on the boards, so you may be already aware of my thought on this, but Vidiians don't respond well to being wiped out because they are dependent on their opponent giving them what they need. And so starving them out after they've been wiped basically shuts them out. So even if you're just going to play like, I'm not going to play a deck that's like necessarily like super ready for organ bank, it's not necessarily going to exploit the the draw play mismatch angle. What you can do instead is you can play a deck that's focused on wipeouts. And so you play with Vidiian, you play with like Buried Alive God combo to like blow up their ship full of people. Maybe you even play with like Shades of Grey Brutality with Barclay's Protomorphosis disease. You know, I mean, they obviously have a ton of medical and they have a decent amount of security. Science is a little bit more shady, but they tend to have all of that, so I don't necessarily know how well that would work. It would definitely just require that you set it up well, you know. and you're probably selling out to it. Like it's going to take all 3 dilemmas in your 3-card combo in order to make that hit. But if you make them commit the people, and then you can scissor out exactly what they, you know, one of their copies of whichever of the 3 that you need to pull out, and then smash them with the Barclays, and they lose like everybody, then you can literally just dial back to, I'm going to just go draw 1 and play 2 guys, or draw 2 and play 1, you know, draw 2 and play 2 guys. And you starve them out because their ability to rebuild is not there anymore. So those are, in summation, the 3 weaknesses of the Vidiian deck. 1, if you can deal with the Oregon Bank early, you deal with them, their ability to harass you and slow you down. 2, if you can manage your draws and your plays where you maybe give them too much of one and not enough of the other, there's a mismatch there and their gears aren't firing. And your deck is probably better designed. And then 3, if you can exploit wipeouts. And wipeouts are good against everybody, maybe except Borg. But Borg are susceptible to different kinds of wipeouts than the average deck. But the Vidiian deck isn't necessarily putting out multiple ships. It's definitely not, you know, putting out like, you know, it doesn't have a whole lot of like cheating ability. It doesn't have a whole lot of skill gain ability. And so your ability to like scissor out what you need to scissor out for a wipeout goes way up. And so, you know, if you want to deal with the Vidiian deck on like the dilemma front, then that's what I recommend. Play with God combos, play with Barclays Protomorphosis Disease, play V'ger setup combos, etc., etc. So, anyway, I do have kind of set up here a quick little let's do a quick little fishbowl here to kind of show what I'm saying here kind of in action. So I've got kind of things set up. We're not going to do dilemmas because we're not going to get to that point with this little fishbowl. But basically we're going to see if the Vidiian deck goes first or second. So the Vidiian deck is going to roll, and if it rolls a 4 through 6, we'll assume that it goes first. Vidiian deck goes second. Okay. So we've shuffled here. Let's draw our 7. We already have exactly what we need here in order to be able to deal with an opponent, to deal with the Vidiian opponent. They can claw our ship here at the Federation outpost all they want, as long as we leave our people on the outpost on that very first turn. If they decide to Oregon Bank here, they can't claw us and get to our people. They're safe on the outpost. So that's what we're going to operate. That's the assumption that we're going to operate under. Okay? So we basically go, okay, free play J, and then we just go ahead and card play a Mourn. And then we will give them a draw by downloading oh, he was the next card anyway. Oh my gosh, that's unfortunate. So we download Mr. and Mrs. Troy, so the opponent does get to draw a card. And then we basically just sit tight. Okay? And we're not even going to worry about the fact that we don't have like the 2 Bajoran resistance personnel. We are unconcerned about that because we have the ready room door that we need. And so what we can do is we can ready room door now for the captain's log to put it into play. And then we can just basically put that back on top of the deck. And then we go to end of turn and we just draw our 1 card. I mean, we could draw more if we want to. It's not probably a big problem if we give our opponent like a bunch of stuff here, but then that means stopping them on board the ship or stopping them over here, and they might be able to get onto Deep Space Nine somehow. It's unlikely that they can because they basically need to have a VIP they need to have a VIP, and I don't know that there's any universal, so we could theoretically be safe if we just go over here two bait. If we go over here to Deep Space Nine and dock, and we just dock the ship again and put everybody on Deep Space Nine to take a card draw. I mean, that's one option that we can do, but let's just not do that. And we'll just take our end of turn draw to get our ready room door back. Opponent goes to their turn. They've gotten essentially just one free draw, and we only played two. We played 3 people, so they got to play 1 personnel for free. So they've gotten 1 free play, 1 draw. That's all they've gotten. Okay, and that personnel had to play back here to the Vidiian outpost. Opponent goes to their turn. So they took a draw, and then they got to like free play a person. So let's just assume that they just free played, probably like say their Denarapel back here. Okay, they go to their turn and they get to download their organ bank. Those Vidiian cruisers, and okay, so here's the Vidiian harvester. I don't see the organ bank. There it is. And the way I kind of set this up was you get Thaden for an engineer, and then you get the 2 copies of Maleth. I think that's how we had this version set up. I don't remember if I did or not, or if that's one of my new tech things. I see Bryden's. I don't see Maleth here. Yeah, that may have been new tech. Oh, there's Maleth. There's Maleth. And there's Maleth. Yep, I did have it in this version. So, all right. So they basically get that. They do have. So you're 1, 5, 8. They don't have enough range to go all the way here to set themselves off to download the outpost that they want to. They wanted to be more threatening to start with. They wanted to hedge their bets where they maybe could be threatening. So we assume that they just basically stand pat right here and go, okay, cool. Not gonna bother clawing the Enterprise because it's docked, right? There's no one on board it to get to. You can't go from the Enterprise to the outpost. And so, yeah, all it can really do is just stay there. They'll just Q's tent in order to grab. I mean, this version has Kevin Uxbridge, and they could Kevin Uxbridge the captain's log. So that might have been a reason not to do that. But let's assume that they're not being huge, you know, that they don't necessarily have the Kevin Uxbridge. I mean, that's kind of like play counterplay with deck design. I mean, it's theoretically possible that they could do that, but, you know, let's assume not. So, let's also change something here. I just noticed this. The way this was also designed was that you would start Search for Spares here so that your card play could be the download of the outpost without having to move, because you could do it at your opponent's non-aligned mission. So let's assume that that's what they do for their card play, and then they put the Vidiian Sagality on the organ bank. And so then when they Q's tent for something, let's say they probably just Q's tent for a space dock, and they put space dock into their hand. And then they don't draw anything. Whether or not they would dock would be kind of one of those like questions, because maybe, you know, they do have the Herd for Harvest in hand. So maybe they dock, maybe they don't. If they don't dock, then this is kind of where we show we can show how we then deal with them, because this is like going to be a surprise. So the Vidiian player, if they're being cautious, they would dock, and we're just basically punting the whole thing. In which case, we just keep playing personnel here, maybe drawing some card. We just draw a couple cards, we play a couple people. You know, here at the Federation outpost, maybe we tempt them. We like fly, you know, we fly somewhere. We make them try to get closer to us, right? Because our Enterprise has 10 range, they have 10 range. If we fly like all the way over to here, you know, 1, 5, 8. Like if we fly to here, they can also get here and they could claw us. So maybe we don't do that. But this is where I'm kind of showing that, you know, with some forethought, you can at least be prepared to give yourself the options. The other option that we have that the opponent doesn't is we can just go through the Bajoran wormhole. Okay, we can go through the Bajoran wormhole and the Organ Bank can't follow us. So if we really want to be interesting, we could undock Enterprise E, go through the Bajoran wormhole. We could literally just beam some people onto Deep Space Nine, because we see now that they didn't put any VIPs, right, on board the Organ Bank, and so we could just put people on Deep Space Nine, and we could kind of maybe get things set up here with Morn and whatever, and then we could just go through the Bajoran wormhole, and then when we want to pop out, we could just pop out, smack them. It's another option. Well, let's assume, like I said, let's assume for the purposes of this demonstration that the Vidiian player wasn't cautious. They probably, you know, maybe they're just like a little overzealous or lazy, or, you know, just lose their head in the moment. And then they pass the turn back to us. Well, then we can simply just go, okay, well, let's just go Vic Fontaine as a card play, just because. And then we can Ready Room Door. We get, we grab our copy of Jean-Luc Picard, who's a matching commander. We can protect the captain's log. And realistically, if we would have had like 2 copies of Ready Room Door, we would have been able to protect the captain's log. So that's just one of those strategy considerations. So we do that. We get Picard, and then yeah, we can basically load up. And fly to here. And since the Organ Bank is undocked, and we have 4 Enterprise E people, I believe then. 4 Enterprise E icons. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our Enterprise E goes to a 10, 11, 12, which means we know that any tactic card we draw is going to be enough for us. And so we would just... and I don't have the battle bridge set up properly, unfortunately. I kind of vacillated back between the battle bridge door auxiliary and the non-auxiliary, and so we can do this. It doesn't even matter. Let's just, what we can do then is we just draw a random one here, call it good. Okay, you know, evasive maneuvers isn't isn't what I'm thinking about here, but there we go. We just randomly pull Quantum Torpedo, and then let's just say we also randomly get full phaser spread, and then we randomly get the evasive maneuvers. Okay, we would obviously choose Quantum Torpedo. No, we would choose full phaser spread, because then we get the +2 on the defense. So now we have 14 shields and 14 weapons, and we easily damage their organ bank. So we just take, say, 2 random flips here. Since we're not doing anything with the Vidiian deck, let's do this. I'm going to load a deck that I know has a battle bridge that's that. Yep, here's the 13 for that one. And it would just flip like, say, that, and flip an evasive maneuvers. Although we drew an evasive maneuvers, so let's do this. Okay, so it must be destroyed. And so now we've damaged them for minus 55, and their shields are now minus 2, and their weapons are minus 2. And so they're definitely not hitting us. But we just go ahead and exploit our make it so. We unstop the ship with an Enterprise E matching commander. We don't even discard the make it so. And then we can just basically draw. We can then basically put these aside. And we draw 3 more tactics again. We get a quantum torpedo, a Picard maneuver, and a photon torpedo, and it really does not matter what we choose. Let's just choose the Picard maneuver for the funsies of it. So we would have a 50-50% chance of avoiding damage in this battle anyway. And we do 2 more flips at random, and that is, gosh, again, definitively enough for us to be able to destroy their ship. So the organ bank is destroyed. Their ability to report personnel to the Alpha Quadrant is destroyed. They wasted their, they wasted a lot just trying to get set up in the Alpha Quadrant, and we just wasted them right away. So now everything they do is just going to be basically limited here to back in the Delta Quadrant for a while, and that's going to allow us to basically go full speed ahead. So what? So what if they're like drawing as many cards as we are, and they're playing as many personnel as we are? Our personnel are going to be better. Our card draws are going to be more probably efficient, and we're going to have the cheating ability that we have with Vic Fontaine. And once we get her into play, we'll get Anastasia into play. And so whatever our opponent's doing with their dilemmas, we're going to have an efficient means to deal with it. And with the organ bank gone, then because we see that they have the let me help, their ability to exploit, if we lose our people to the love interest, to the planet, to the the planet over here, we're much more comfortable sending a ship over to go pick them up. Cool. Again, this is literally just like an example. Obviously, your mileage may vary when you're in a real game trying to deal with, what are your card draws exactly? Does your Vidiian opponent have a Kevin Uxbridge in the tent? So maybe you don't want to do Captain's Log right away. Or if you do, you play the Captain's Log and then you immediately protect it with a ready room door, and you just, and you basically hope to have a second ready room door show up. But there's lots of ins and outs. But that's kind of the long and short of it. The Vidiian deck is not unbeatable. It just plays differently. It gets into your face directly in a way that no other deck other than Borg and some Dominion decks have been able to do. And no one's ever said that those Borg and Dominion decks are overpowered. Yes, they've had to have erratas and stuff, but lots of good decks have as new cards come out and we get a better understanding of the game. But I don't see anything different here with the Vidiian deck. If you can just attack it at its weak spots, it's a bad solver, and it's really in no way going to be able to put up an armada. So as long as you can deal with an organ bank and you can fight off an individual Vidiian cruiser here and there, you should still be able to do better than it, especially if your deck is set up to be able to solve missions with efficient personnel. So that's all I have for you on this. Feel free to leave comments and your thoughts. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Feel free to find me on the Trek CC boards. Join the conversation about the Vidiian deck. But I have a lot of ideas about how to deal with this deck. Too many to go into, many of which I'm keeping for myself. And then of course there's the reality that I have a lot of thoughts about individual decks and matchups, and if the meta does kind of go heavy into Vidiian, like what are some of the decks that you would want to consider playing then in that meta. Maybe I'll save that for a future video, but suffice it to say that one thing that the Vidiian deck is going to do to the meta is make it so that plain old vanilla solvers that are not ready to deal with an organ bank are just, they are a non-starter right now, and interrupt base draw engines are also a bit of a non-starter right now. And I'm sorry if that's your preferred way to play. I'm sorry that if you think that that's, like the only way to play, but I'm going to tell you right now that there are still many ways to play this game. And as a card play, if you're going to play a CCG and you want to play it at a highly competitive level, it's about your ability to adapt to the meta. It's not about the meta adapting to you. Okay? And I'm not, like I said, I'm not calling out anyone in particular. That's a truth, regardless of who or what has said anything. Okay? So, hope you all enjoyed this video. Like I said, like and subscribe. May the profits be with you.